The Monatomic Clock, where space meets time. This is the Monatomic Clock. The clock has 12 animations, which are repeated in 5-minute increments. Each increment displays an iconic image from a place where I have either lived or had memorable visits with our family. I built the Monatomic Clock after Alec gave me a book on a graphical programming language as a Christmas gift in 2019. He suggested we work on something together. It was a terrific opportunity to join our skills. There were many spirited conversations leading to the final design, but I am grateful to Alec for all his inspiration and assistance in constructing the Monatomic Clock. This video will describe the origin of the composition. We'll look at the individual movements with their own history, my connection to them, and the development steps in reaching the final piece. The images are mostly neon signs. Neon is a monatomic gas, hence the name, the Monatomic Clock. The first movement I created was the Citgo sign in Boston, and it had been intended as just a one-off. But I liked the way it looked and thought about all the places I lived in the USA and Europe. I never imagined constructing so many classic images. In researching the signs, the photos and videos connected me to unique times and places in my life and the people I knew then and there. Now, the Monatomic Clock does that all day. The Monatomic Clock's method for telling time is a combination of knowing the order of and some visible cues within the movements. The nature of the cues varies across digital and analog display, Arabic and Roman numerals, colors, shapes, and gradual shifts. The order of movements is correlated to when I encountered them, starting at an early age when I was hypnotized by a blinking paint can. The Wallauer paint can and Grand Central Station. Up until I was 5, our cousins lived in Yonkers near Tuckahoe Road, where there was a paint store with a sign that changed colors. My brother, sister, and I remember driving by, staring at the sign, craning our necks to keep it in sight. It was mesmerizing against the black background of the night sky. It was a completely different experience in daylight. The sign is still there nearly 60 years later, and whenever I pass by it, I can remember sitting in the back of our purple Mercury Comet station wagon wondering how the sign worked and what it meant. The paint can image on its own lacked a way to indicate minutes. I decided to add a link to Westchester County where I grew up, not far from Wallauer's paint. The big board in Grand Central was something I remember staring at as well. After a day in the city, while waiting in the terminal's majestic main concourse, we fixated on the board to tell us which track was our way home. The spiraling letter animation reflects the board's pre-digital system. The comments capture the messaging that forever menaces travelers in the Northeast. This movement runs from the top of the hour to 5 minutes past. The top 5 destinations cascade in gold to represent the time shift. The Citgo sign in Boston. The Citgo sign is the granddaddy of them all. High above Kenmore Square and visible from the Emerald Bandbox, it has presided over the Boston skyline since 1940. The original neon sign contained nearly 6,000 glass tubes with a total length of more than 5 miles. The animation is a series of white horizontal lines overlaid with red triangles that pulse up and down and in and out. The Monatomic Clock's animation incorporates the bulb fail rate in order to tell time. This movement runs from 5 to 10 past the hour. A flickering bulb in the far left column means it is 5 past. Over the 5-minute span, each column has a white light flicker until the far right indicates 9 minutes past. I first saw the sign in 1973 in one of the 3 trips I can remember making with my family as a child. Later, while at university, The sign was visible from every place I ever lived in Boston. It is an anchor from a place I will always cherish. Aside from my family and friends, there is nothing I will ever care about in life more than what happens in the shadow of the Citgo sign.
Swinging a ground ball, stabbed by Polk. He has it. He underhands to first, and the Boston Red Sox are the world champions for the first.
The Bond sign, New York City. By 1980, I had moved to New York to finish my bachelor's degree. While working and going to school, I went to an infamous Clash concert in Times Square at Bond International Casino. I had seen the Clash in Brixton, at Shea Stadium, and finally at Bond, the last being the loudest concert I ever attended, and I remember having to go outside to get away from the noise. I can still hear the effects of Joe Strummer's guitar in my right ear when I lie in bed at night. The massive, spectacular Bond sign, which spanned 2 streets, was originally constructed in the late 40s. Over time, the site's design took various forms with features such as maps, waterfalls, enormous Greek figures, and a zipper sign. It was captured in countless photos and has become an emblem of Times Square's post-war glory years. The original Bond zipper had more than 20,000 light bulbs. I constructed the zipper to scroll weather reports from the locations in the Monatomic Clock's movements. There had been numerous clock designs in the Times Square sign, but I selected the analog version inside the letter O. The Bond Times Square movement is displayed in the Monatomic Clock from 10 minutes to 1:15 and shows the hour and minute. The coloring and ordering of the letters' illumination mirrors the original patterns as much as possible. I had considered waterfalls and maps as part of the Monatomic Clock design, but ultimately preferred the simplicity of the big characters. The Schweppes sign, Madrid. I had finally graduated. With some money in the bank, I headed to Madrid with no real plan. There were many intercambios along the Gran Via, mixed with tapas, café con leche, and películas en versión original. Madrid is the political, economic, and cultural center of Spain, and I walked and rode the metro everywhere in hopes of becoming a madrileño. Not far from the Plaza Mayor, the Schweppes sign illuminates the entrance to the Callao metro stop, from where, many times, I boarded the last train back to Sáenz de Baranda. Replicating the pattern of coloring for the sign's vertical lines was straightforward. The sign itself is a rectangle, but with a convex shape due to its installation. To capture this perspective, I added segments to the top and bottom, giving the movement a curvilinear shape. Schweppes runs from 15 to 20 minutes past the hour. A small upright bar flows from left to right across the bottom, indicating the elapsed time. The eye-catching finish of each cycle reflects the vibrancy of the city over which it shines. The Martini sign in Florence. Meanwhile, across the sea, on the eastern side of the Olive Belt, an unassuming, prepossessing art history student with a laugh that just makes you want to be smart and funny was researching statues and learning the subtlety of biscotti, cappuccino, and gelato. Florence, the birthplace of the Renaissance, with its rich history of architecture, restricts the elevation of neon so as not to detract from the Palazzo Vecchio nor Il Duomo. However, contained within its medieval walls and visible from afar stands a lone sign commemorating the company founded by Alessandro Martini, which produces the world-famous vermouth made from wild regional botanicals. Although I have visited Florence, I cannot say I have seen the Martini sign. When constructing the movement, I used the limited online imagery to position the letters and its bright orange lines as accurately as possible. The movement's animation is my best guess. Colors of the Italian flag are used to express the passage of time. The Martini movement runs from 20 to 25 past the hour. For the first minute, the letters are black with white borders. Over the next minutes, the letters turn green, red, and white in steps and stay bright white for the last minute. Oxo, the Gherkin, and the Eye. London. With a duffel bag and some American Express checks, I moved from the continent to London with no preconceptions on how long I would stay. I quickly landed a job in the city and rented a flat in Notting Hill. I will always consider London as the center of the world and often feel it is my home city. The Oxo building sits prominently along the south bank of the Thames. Constructed in the Art Deco style by its owner, the intent was to include a tower featuring illuminated signs advertising the name of their product. Except, skyline advertising was banned along the river and permission was refused. The tower was built with 4 sets of 3 vertically aligned windows, which, coincidentally, happened to be in the shapes of a circle, an X, and a circle, spelling out Oxo. In later years, as the carbuncle phase of British urban architecture ended, a wondrous building rose on the former sites of the Baltic Exchange and Chamber of Shipping in the City of London. Nicknamed the Gherkin due to its appearance, the building became an instant landmark in the skyline. About the same time, back on the South Bank, the Eye did for London what the Eiffel Tower had achieved for Paris, a symbol to let all people rise above the city and look back down on it. It was public, accessible, and in the heart of London. In 2001, the whole family took a magical trip to London. One afternoon, the Eye lifted us into the skies for some glorious views of the city where the art historian and I met in a roundabout. The movement has the Oxo Tower in its center. I had planned for the tower to rotate with the 2 other forms revolving behind, but it became technically too challenging to get the 3-dimensional view, and so only one of the 4 sides of the tower is ever shown. As originally designed, the movement has the Eye and the Gherkin float in the background, giving a 360-degree view out of Old Smoke, as London was once called. The London movement is on display from 25 to 30 past the hour. In order to capture the exact minute, the interiors of the rectangles within the X change colors. At 25 past, only the center square is filled with color. As each minute ticks off, another rectangle is shaded. I especially enjoy the visuals of this movement with its floating landmarks and rapidly changing colors. Dim Sum and the Star Ferry in Hong Kong. In 1990, while circumnavigating, the art history student and I faced off on a softball field and then held hands on the altar. Later on the trip, there was a stay in Hong Kong, which allowed time for recalling events and making grand plans while sitting on the top floor of our hotel, the Mandarin Oriental. We also rode the Star Ferry back and forth across Victoria Harbor to the Kowloon Peninsula for a dim sum breakfast. Hong Kong is known for its abundance of neon. The movement shows 2 signs. The larger on the left is for a restaurant offering late-night hot pot seafood barbecue. The smaller sign, while accurate in design, has been reworded to present the 3 stars considered essential in Chinese mythology: Jupiter, Ursa Major, and Canopus. The stars are also embodiments of fortune, prosperity, and longevity. It seems appropriate. The movement runs from 1/2 to 25 before the hour. The Star Ferry traverses the screen in both directions over the segment. The pair of logos reflect the constant running of the service between the island and the peninsula. The Merritt Parkway and the Motel Hi-Ho. A quintessential New England landscape thoroughfare, the Merritt Parkway is known for its scenic layout and architecturally interesting overpasses. The stretch of road between exits 42 in Westport and 44 in Fairfield, Connecticut, runs 5.5 miles without a single off-ramp. and Exit 43 was planned but never built. Locals refer to the section as the no-exit zone. High above Exit 44 sits the Motel Hi-Ho. I have childhood memories of seeing the red neon while riding on the Merritt to and from Laurel Beach and Milford. In later years, on drives to one of the children's high schools, returning from a baseball game, or a visit to Rhode Island, we were rewarded with a glimpse of the sign letting us know we were close to home. Recently renovated, it has been upgraded to a hotel. The Hi-Ho runs from 35 past to 20 minutes before the hour. Each minute, one of the characters in the word Hi-Ho has a bright white center, starting with the middle dash and then running left to right. The Helms Bakery sign in Los Angeles. After 20-plus years in New England, there was an opportunity to continue the journey west. Like a family of settlers, we loaded up the jalopy with our remaining possessions, strapped some old-growth lumber to the roof, stuffed the dog in the back, and set off for Southern California. In Los Angeles County's Culver City is the venerable Helms Bakery. Opened in 1931, Helms became the official baker of the 1932 Summer Olympics with a contract to supply bread to the Los Angeles Games. In later years, Helms went on to supply bread at the Berlin, London, and Helsinki Games. The slogan, Olympic Games Bakers, Choice of Olympic Champions, was coined, and Helms incorporated the Olympic symbol into its logo on bread wrappers, delivery trucks, and the neon sign atop the bakery itself. The historic sign was an arresting animation sequence which recreates what the Greeks call the divine elements of an Olympic torch ceremony. A parabolic shape sparks a flame onto the Helms crest, and the kaleidoscopic letters twinkle while the taglines flash in an alternating pattern. All can be viewed across Culver City and, if you happen to look up at the right moment, near the La Brea exit on the Santa Monica Freeway. The Monatomic Clock reproduces the torch-lighting imagery by arcing the visible spectrum across the screen and fueling the emblem. The Helms movement runs from 20 to 15 minutes before the hour. At the bottom of the screen, as an homage to its Olympic theme, minutes are shown in Roman numerals. Much like the OXO movement, I enjoy these visuals with their tilted block lettering, energetic starburst, and brilliant arc. Over the years, there were many family trips taken across the USA and Great Britain, and many nights staying in different hotels. This movement recreates a surreal night in Bakersfield. The historic Padre Hotel, constructed in 1928, opened full of promise, catering to oilmen and the wider Kern County business community. But by the 1960s, the Padre had fallen into disrepair and became a derelict hotel. The upper floors were condemned, but often had squatters occupying the rooms. The bar downstairs stayed open during this time and was a meeting place for the city's misfits and barflies. In the early 21st century, the Padre was the centerpiece to a downtown renovation in a city struggling with crime. With paint still drying in its guest rooms, the Padre hosted us one night during a trip across the state of California. Just down the block, Fox had opened a multiplex capped by a clock tower, where the children headed to catch the latest Harry Potter film. The more thrilling show, however, took place out the picture window from the hotel room. Sirens drew us to the window, letting us see a runner duck into the open-air, multi-level parking garage across the street. From below, a police officer wobbled up the ramps in pursuit of his quarry. In the next moment, a helicopter appeared and beamed its spotlight onto the garage. The squeeze was on. From 9:45 to 10 before the hour, the Monatomic Clock blends its neon sign with animated illustrations in a semi-realistic style. The simulated cat-and-mouse scenario, a swooping spot, the sign's skewed letters, and shadowed scaffolding all evoke the eeriness of that night's real-life film noir scene. Best Western. In the 60s and 70s, Best Western was the world's largest hotel chain and the motel of choice for the art historian's family on long road trips. That tradition carries on with our family more than 50 years later, with many trips to the ice machine along the hallways of Best Westerns across the USA and England. In the latter part of the 20th century, Best Western responded to tremendous growth in the travel industry by revolutionizing the methods of advertising travel properties and took a leadership role in creating a travel brand. The chain introduced its gold crown logo in 1962. The bright colors, rope border, and stylized design were instantly recognizable. The highly visible signage reassured travelers as they approached their destination. The Monatomic Clock's Best Western movement is not modeled on a neon sign. Instead, it exhibits the chase light sequences from the hotel's signage. As the end of the hour approaches and we have chosen our lodging from all the clock's hotel options, the Best Western crown illuminates its points, left to right, from 50 to 55 minutes past the hour. Much like the earliest TV broadcasts, the Monatomic Clock uses the closed-down test card pattern as a signal it is time to sign off. A few years ago, I finished my first and only painting, a depiction of the test pattern. Rarely seen now, the rectilinear image was omnipresent when I was young. The colorful vertical bars revive memories of life in high school when the range of cool was bounded by watching Don Kirshner's rock concert at 1 a.m. Sunday morning. Alas, many times, when awoken by the accompanying sine wave tone after the music ended, the house was cold, and now it really was time to go to bed. The test pattern bars and tones serve a number of technical purposes for engineers to check peak levels of color, saturation, and alignment. Things such as vector scopes, red cycling, castellations, graticules, and signal clippings must all modulate correctly to ensure a TV picture is properly calibrated. The test pattern's lower left has a white square used to adjust luminance. In the Monatomic Clock, I have inserted a countdown sequence to measure off the last 5 minutes of the hour. The sequence, which employs a clock sweep radar design, was used in TV and film for purposes such as synchronization and alignment. As with each hour on the Monatomic Clock, these countdowns signal the beginning and end of a film or broadcast. The hour is now done. I hope you enjoyed this trip to various parts of the world and that you get to see these memorable signs and places in person.